Pleasant good afternoon. We welcome you to another day, Thursday. A lot going on, and we will try to deal with all the different topics for you immediately. And a number of guests, your phone calls, of course, as well at 855-242-7285. Let's get right to the headlines, and they are some interesting ones here on this Thursday, the 15th day of February. Auburn keeps doing what it's done all season long, even against Kentucky. Did you stay up last night and see what happened? Auburn broke out of a close game to beat the Cats fourth straight for Kentucky. Cal trying to be philosophical, but I'm not sure how well this is playing in the Commonwealth.
I'm old. I've been through just about everything, so I just say I'm not fazed by it. I'm not cracking. I'm not. Here's when you say that, this isn't about me, okay? This season is not going to change anything about me. But my concern is I got a bunch of young kids that at times don't listen, they don't trust. And I told them last night, I failed them. I haven't built enough trust where when I talk to them, I'm going to do what this man says. They're not that. I don't know if it's outside stuff, but I told them I failed them. But they've also failed each other because they don't play for each other. They play like, again, a guy gets 8 straight points scored on him. Do you really want to win? If you want to win, that's just not happening, but you're not concerned about that. How you're playing. We have to get by.
So some troubled times in Kentucky, and John Calipari catching it today from all over. Many national critics have excoriated him, and certainly with some justification when you look at the body of work. He's the head basketball coach too. Maybe he ought to be the head football coach. He is the head man, and to talk about players not listening to him, well, ultimately that's his job. We'll get into that a little bit later on. We want your reaction to what's going on in Kentucky at 855-242-7285. Meanwhile, we'll talk in a few minutes with Pat Dooley. 3 weeks ago on this program, one of our many experts told us Florida was the best team in the SEC. Well, they're not anymore. They have hit the wall. Georgia had virtually no shot last night in this game. Their win probability had dropped to literally 0. And then they went crazy, outscoring Georgia. Georgia outscoring Florida 33-19 in the final 15 minutes. First win in Gainesville since 2002. Best comeback by an SEC team this year. Well, that didn't take much to decipher. And another great game. It preceded the Georgia game. I was watching this game. If you didn't see it or hear it, this is what it sounded like in Nashville.
Missed the second, 2-point game. Vanderbilt out of timeouts. LaChance an open look for three! He hit it! LaChance hit it to senior!
Well, they'll take another look at this one. With the composure of LaChance, who took contact on the wing. Perhaps even shuffled his feet a little bit before he let that ball go. That is an unbelievable shot by LaChance.
And we're going to have the game winner guard on later on. LaChance will join us in about 90 minutes. Vanderbilt's having a tough year. That was one of the big moments, but that may have been a dagger through Mississippi State's NCAA chances. We had Ben Howland on the other day. They had to win that game. They did not. Jeff Goodman in Auburn last night. He will join us in about an hour. Pat Dooley on the situation in Gainesville. Also some news on the former football coach. And Antonio Morales on Ole Miss. But first, your phone calls at 855-242-7285. Let's continue. Let's always take your phone calls. Again, 855-242-7285. A lot of guests, but we want your reaction. Certainly want some reaction from the Commonwealth. See what folks up there are saying about one of the nastiest losing streaks we have seen in I think since Eddie Sutton was the head basketball coach at UK. Let's get some reaction to that and talk first with Shaun, who is in Ontario. Hello, Shaun. Good afternoon to you. Shaun, you there?
Oh, I'm here.
Shaun, go right ahead.
Oh, great. You can hear me 100% now, Paul?
100%, maybe even more.
Okay. Far be it from me to talk about the Commonwealth, Paul, since I don't live there, but I was wondering if I could talk about some things from yesterday's show that we could unpack briefly, if you don't mind.
Yeah, for those who missed yesterday's show, there was a lot to digest. Go right ahead.
Absolutely, yeah. I was listening to the podcast this morning and as I was jogging, and Paul, let me ask you something. You've known Mike Slive for many years, correct?
That is absolutely correct.
And in all the times you've broken bread with him, has he ever mentioned how wealthy he is or how much money he has in the bank?
Let me say this about Mike Slive. I met him about 20 years ago when he was a commissioner of Conference USA. He became the SEC commissioner, and we developed a relationship, moved into a friendship, and then I say this from the bottom of my heart, moved into almost like an older brother. I feel that close to him. I think in all the time I've been around Mike Slive, and I had lunch with him a couple of times during in New Orleans and again in Atlanta during the conference, the college football championship. I don't think I've ever heard Mike Slive talk about money one time ever.
And I would guess another really good friend of yours, Joe Namath, he's never mentioned how much money he has in the bank either.
I've never heard Joe mention money at all. Most people that I think
have
I know
money don't need to talk about it. That's right, Paul, and that's kind of what my point was about yesterday's call with Legend. Is John Hayes available?
Let me check. Mark, is John Hayes in the building today?
Yeah, he came back. He's here. I was escorted in, plus security. Well,
that's a switch.
Well, John, it's a pleasure to talk to you again, and I really hope you enjoyed your trip. Did you happen to make it to Ireland?
No, not this time. I will, though, for sure in the future.
Okay, well, just so you know, I put a $100 tab at McGrattan's bar just for you. I wasn't sure if you were going to go there or not, but just to let you know, when you're in Ireland, head to McGrattan's, and the night's on me, man.
Thank you, Shaun. Appreciate it, man. I'm there.
Well,
you got to tell me that before I go.
Here's why I wanted to talk about this. John, your last name, Hayes, that name is so deeply respected in Ireland. It's almost as old as Ireland itself. And your name means descended from fire. And you spit some fire at Legend yesterday, and I'm proud of you 100%, man, because there is no way an Irish person would allow that guy to disrespect anybody with that name. That name, it rings out in Ireland.
Shaun, for those who missed it, Legend returned to the show Monday. He had been gone for a while.
Yeah, he's a punk. Legend's a punk.
He returned to the show, and he and John got into a pretty spirited. Help me with this, Shaun. If they had been in a bar in Dublin, how would this have ended?
Legend, there'd be two sounds, Paul. The first sound would be a fist hitting Legend's face, and the second sound would be him being thrown out on the street. That wouldn't have gone over very well. I mean, he would have had to.
And let me say this: Legend's a street fighter, okay?
And, he is. But there's an old saying in Ireland, Paul: blood makes you a relative, but loyalty makes you family, and that's how I feel about this show too. It's about loyalty, and that guy is loyal only to himself, and I could speak the same for Jim from Tuscaloosa. And before I go, Paul, real quick,
hold on. What do you have? What's the deal? Where did Jim from Tuscaloosa come from?
Oh, well, I wanted to also unpack something you said last Friday, Paul, where you said that he might not even be the best Jim to ever call into your show.
Right.
And I agree with you 100%. Jim from Crestwood is, like, in the annals of listening to this show, Paul, there have been many people who have tried desperately to just get under your skin. And Jim from Crestwood tried the hard. I remember that call he made where he made those disparaging and false remarks about Dr. Larry Lemack, and you sent him walking with his tail between his legs. And although he says he doesn't call in anymore, and good for him because he stood up and he hasn't, so you have to give him credit for that. I think one of the reasons why he left the show, Paul, was because he knew that as hard as he tried to get under your skin, he couldn't do it.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. He was a great caller, and he quit. And I do remember those battles about my good friend Dr. Lemack. As far as Legend, I mean, I don't need to defend Legend. I think Legend comes from a different mindset than John Hayes, and I found it to be moderately entertaining. As far as Jim from Tuscaloosa, he's just become annoying and kind of a tired story, really.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's all I wanted to say. I mean, what happened in that situation is that John's a very educated person, and he didn't have to stop using words to try and put Legend in a tizzy. But Legend couldn't use his words anymore. And when he stopped critically thinking,
hold on a second. Shaun, I hate to subject you to this, but somebody would like to take issue with what you're saying. Are you good with that?
Oh, really? Okay.
Okay.
Let me tell you something, you Irish moron. I'm Irish. I was born strong Irish.
I don't care if you're Irish.
Shut up, you fool. You're the punk. You're the punk, you fool. You better not. I wish you'd get in my way. And if you ever got in Legend's way, he'd run over you like a Mack truck. You're a stinking rotten punk, you punk. Don't you come in here talking about me. You know nothing about me. You know nothing about me. You're a stinking perv. You're a punk. You're probably a homo. I know that you're a perv. But don't come in here running down people you know nothing about who made this show what it was once before. Don't tell me nothing about Legend, and don't come here lying about me. You're a stinking lying punk.
What did I lie about?
Come on back, buddy. Come on down.
What did I lie about?
Come on down, you stinking punk.
What did I lie about?
You got a voice like a little girl. You're a weasel trying to make a name for yourself of people that made this show what it was. Don't tell me nothing about Legend. Legend will run all over you. Legend is a real man, breathing fire like he ought to breathe. All you're doing is talking.
Hey, Jim, are you going to let this guy speak? Or Jim, would you allow him to?
You're not even American.
Jim, would you mind allowing him to respond?
What
Okay.
difference does that make? What difference does that make that I'm not American? What difference does that make?
You're a liar, man. I know a liar.
Yeah, I'm a liar. What did I lie about?
What are you trashing?
What did I lie about?
Trashing people you know nothing about.
What did I lie about?
Did what he did. John Hayes did what he did.
Tell me what I lied about.
But don't come in here attacking me and Legend when you know nothing about either one of us. We'll run all over you, you fool.
All I'm talking about is what you two morons said.
I can't talk to a fool. The only reason I call right now is to come against and rebut your
You can't even show your face.
idiotic trash.
Because you're such a punk.
No, you're a real punk.
No, I'm not. I'm a 33-year-old grown man.
You're a 33-year-old
and I'm not going to kick your ass.
Weasel. That's all you are.
You're
a weasel. You come to people like you that come on this show and think they got something, they can attack somebody and bring them down.
Man, you just
bring a real man down. I know what I am. I know what Legend is. He's better in his
Okay. Listen, we've had enough because Jim would not allow Shaun to respond. It's a little difficult to hear what's going on. Shaun, thanks.
All I wanted to know about is what he accused me of lying of. I mean, he couldn't even tell me.
No, he just had to kind of overwhelm you with his bravado.
His voice on the radio maybe was overwhelming, but I don't feel overwhelmed.
One thing you did, Shaun, you got under his skin. I think you accomplished that.
Well, that wasn't the point of my call, Paul. But hey.
I don't know if I've ever heard Jim lose his cool to that degree. Thanks for the call, Shaun. Thanks, Jim. We're off and running.
Bye-bye, Paul.
Goodbye.
Hello, I'd like to deposit this to checking.
Fate is a fickle master.
What?
The future is uncertain.
Okay, and what's my account balance?
The horizon is cloudy. I see a long, treacherous voyage filled with great peril.
Look, can I just get a deposit slip or something?
A fortune bank teller. Surprising. What's not surprising? How much you could save by switching to Geico.
I see a yellow-eyed serpent and a low APR.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Pat Dooley to the show at a good time. Pat Dooley, the longtime columnist in Gainesville and, of course, the noted talk show host. So let's start, Pat. Always good to have you on. Let's start with last night. Georgia just literally comes out of nowhere. They're so far down, their probability of winning is not even on the chart. And they pull one off against the Gators, who, by most people's account, 3 weeks ago, had the best team in the SEC.
Well, this has been a weird team. This is a team that cannot stand prosperity. Every time you start to feel like they're figured it out and they're playing at a certain level, whether it's shooting-wise, whether it's effort-wise, whether it's rebounding-wise, they turn around and they lay an egg. And the egg last night all happened late. I mean, they really controlled the game for the whole game, had an 11-point lead, and then all of a sudden a team that had made 2 threes the entire game makes 3 in the last minute, 2 of them by their 6'10" center. So, and they were tough shots. It wasn't like Florida. But again, if Florida gets the ball in bounds, gets to one of their free throw shooters, they got 90% free throw shooters, they win the game. To me, this was the worst loss they've had all year, even though they've had some blowout losses, some painful losses. This was the one that I think people went to bed and had a hard time sleeping. Because it's just the way they let it get away, and it's still a team. We don't know where they're not guaranteed to make the tournament, and they've got a very difficult schedule ahead of them.
So, I mean, this is a team that went to the Elite Eight last year. Much was expected this year, of course. Some injuries have occurred, but let's talk about the schedule. I know they play Kentucky at the end. What are the challenges between now and then?
Well, they also get Auburn next Saturday. They've got here. They got to go to Alabama and they got to go to Tennessee.
Ooh, that's
rough.
First,
yeah. Their schedule always is back-ended, and I mean that's on purpose because let's face it, Paul. I mean, Florida is one of the elite teams in a basketball-starving conference that's gotten way better. This year this conference is tremendous. I'm a believer in this conference. And that I think anybody can beat anybody, and we've seen that night in, night out. But Florida being an elite team, having the national championships, having been all the appearances in the Final Four, their schedule's always been back-ended. Now, when you're sticking Auburn at the end of the schedule, you're not thinking you're back-ending
no.
it because but they've turned out to have an unbelievable season. So it's going to be a tough road. I mean, I think basically any chance of them winning the conference are now out with Auburn winning last night and them losing to Georgia. They just got to try to, A, get in the tournament, B, not have to play on Thursday in St. Louis, and then C, try to get that seed up at least, higher than right now it will be. I think Lenardi today has them as a 7, which is probably closer to being right, maybe as a 6. He had him as a 4 before the game, which I thought was high. But one thing they do have is they have some really quality wins away from home that are going to help them with that committee.
Talking to Pat Dooley, Pat, I want to get back to Mullen in a minute, but there was some news overnight about Jim McElwain. Not that there's a lot of love remaining for him, but it looks like he is heading north. What do you know, and what has the reaction been, if any, in Gainesville?
That name's I don't remember. Was he a coach here at some point?
He was actually at Alabama once. That's where you may have heard his name.
That's what it was. No, look, I think most people here are befuddled by this. They don't care. They didn't like Michigan anyway, so that's just going to make it that much easier to dislike them. But they're like, well, wait a minute. In 2 games against Michigan, Jim McElwain's offense scored 10 points. Why would you want him? Why would you go after him? And Jim McElwain has made it clear he wasn't a big fan of Jim Harbaugh, but that's what happens in the coaching rank. As you know, I mean, You're only as loyal as your paycheck, a wise man once said, and his name was Will Muschamp. And that's the truth, though. I mean, I've told people this a million times. As fans, those fans of you that are out there, of whatever team it is, you care way more about your team and your program than any coach who's ever been at your school. And you have to, once you accept that, you're going to be all right. Because you do. You're not going to change schools. You're not going to say, hey, you know what? Oregon looks like a fun program. Let me go be a fan of them. You're not going to do that. You're an Alabama fan. You're an Alabama fan for life. It doesn't end. Coaches, they come and go, hey, whatever, whatever the paycheck. And the interesting thing is he obviously doesn't need the money with the buyout he got here. It's over $7 million. And it's not, from what I understand, the agreement's not mitigated so that if he makes some there, it comes off that. So but I guess he wants to keep coaching. He wants to make it work. If their offense ends up in the hundreds in the nation, though, wow, that will be the ultimate. He better get Shea Patterson healthy.
Pat Dooley joining us. Hey, Pat, before you go, let's talk a little bit about the current coach, Dan Mullen, making a lot of noise and not too many friends, especially in Georgia. It's been a few weeks more than a few weeks, so nearly 2 months since he has landed. How is he playing so far?
Pretty well. I think that comment he made there was very Spurrier-esque, and that Spurrier used to go to those booster clubs, and everybody would quote him, and he would get all mad. And he'd go, "Oh, come on, man! That's just stuff you say to your boosters," and that's the kind of thing that happened there. But I think the first signing class was as good as anybody could have expected, considering they had 2 months. And the fact that, to me, the biggest takeaway was that he knows this better be his worst class. You know what I mean? This is not acceptable at the University of Florida. It needs to get better, but this is the best they could do with such a limited time and jumping in so late. So I think people like that. I think they like the energy that he has. They like the fact that they have a weight program where the players aren't going off campus to work out because they're not getting enough workout on campus, which was an issue before. And they like just the fact that they may actually score in the 20s a couple of times this year. I mean, that right there got him excited. So he's playing well so far, but you know how it is, Paul, when you're 0-0. It's hard to play bad when you haven't lost a game.
Pat Dooley, always a pleasure. Thank you for dropping in. We hope to see you soon.
All right, buddy. We'll see you, man. Thanks for having me.
Pat made something interesting comment there. Buddy Martin made the same comment yesterday. For Dan Mullen, who is a protege of Urban Meyer, he's starting to sound a lot more like Steve Spurrier. Must be the visor. We'll take a break. More of your phone calls at 855-242-7285. We're often running, I would say, on a Thursday afternoon. Back to the program. Let's grab some more phone calls. And we've already had Jim on the show. What about Darriel? Makes a lot of sense, usually.
Well, I mean, I called him for one reason and one reason only today, okay? I heard I-Man coming here yesterday, running his mouth, bumping his gums, talking a bunch of garbage. I mean, good. Paul, first of all, for him to sit here and call somebody childish, I mean, and he goes by I-Man? Really? At least I go by my real name, okay? I don't have anything to hide, okay? I don't hide behind some fake name like he does, which I think is very childish, big time. Why can't you be just who you are? What do you got to, what are you scared of? I mean, good Lord.
Well, hold on. His real name is Rusty. I mean, he's never.
Oh, I know his real name is Rusty. And he's rusty too, okay? I mean, he's very rusty. That's his problem. You know what? I-Man, if you got the truth out of I-Man, this is the deal right here, okay? If he wished the show was more about the cars and less about sports, and it's not.
Well, why don't we just get right down to the point there? Darriel from Columbus, Georgia. Why don't we just get right down to the point and let me breathe down
guys, one at a time, okay? One at a time.
You have wanted something. You have wanted something forever, and all you do is pose for it. And then when you get the opportunity, all you do is cry. I mean, Mark Richt kicked you off Twitter. He blocked you. He wouldn't even take his phone calls. I mean, you called the show, and you're trying to tell a professional coach knows how to coach
Let me know
football,
when you're
and
done.
you've never played
Sounds
the
like a
game.
broken
Hell,
record.
you barely can
Wah,
play
wah,
with
wah.
yourself successfully. I mean, Darryl, when are you going to get a life? And you
Well,
just
that-
like Legend and them other hood rats and the Jim
he
from
ever shut up?
Tuscaloosa's, and I'll
He
even
never
throw
shuts
Robert
up.
Smile
Never.
in there. It's all about you. What about me? What about
you know
me?
what?
What
You know
about
what?
me? Listen, Darryl, hush up and recognize
You know
you're
what?
being
You
talked
all
down
put you on-
to.
put your
I'm
face
talking
on-
down
on
to you,
the
Darryl. I'm talking down to
He
you.
said, I mean,
I'm
I'm gonna
looking
do it
down
for
at you.
you.
There's
But you know
no
what?
respect.
I'm
There's
putting pain on
no
that face.
respect. None whatsoever. You will never get any respect here because
If
you
my
whine.
dog had a
You know,
face like
I'm
yours,
gonna send
man,
you
I
some
would shave his
cheese
butt
with
and
all
teach
that
him to walk
wine you
backward,
got.
right?
You eat 5 pounds of cheese a day with 3
you know
gallons
what
of
I'm
wine.
doing.
You're never
He's running
satisfied.
finish in
What
the
have
finish.
you done lately, Darryl? What have you done lately? I mean,
Will you
you've
shut
done
up?
as much
Well,
as
that's why
Legend
I'm
and
fine.
K-Dub and
You
Robert.
can.
What about
You
me?
can.
And then poor
Well,
Jim's going to come back. What
this is
about
so
me?
stupid.
Hey,
What
guys,
about
guys,
me?
guys,
Don't
guys, slow
forget
down,
me.
slow down, slow
That's
down.
why I called all of you out yesterday. Called all of you out yesterday because you all suck.
Hello.
You all
He
suck.
can't have
You
a normal-
you
Paul,
suck.
he can't have a
You
normal
suck.
conversation.
Your calls
He
suck.
can't.
There's no creation. There's no imagination.
He can't.
It's all about
We-
what
Georgia
about
has kicked
me.
that
And
angel
you've
in
been around the
so much,
block.
okay?
Listen, I can't help you.
Daryl,
but it's
Daryl, slow down. Daryl,
for yourself.
28-7.
guys, is it all possible for one to speak and then the other to speak? Or?
Well, I can speak, but you can't understand what that gargle. I mean, when are you going to quit all that gargling? Are you half damn mermaid or something? Are you in your swimming pool? You probably in your bathtub with your snorkel.
Okay. I've had it. Guys.
When are you going to? When are you going to get a good phone? When are you going to understand?
Enough. Okay.
Really?
What?
I mean, good Lord. Learn how to talk being an adult. Learn how to have an adult conversation, okay?
Why do you always have to come in and stop me from these blooming idiots? You know why? Because I dominate them so well. You have to give them the opportunity.
You love this. This is right down your alley. This is what you live for. Every time you call in, it's always about some caller. You never talk about sports.
Just
never.
like you.
It's always about Jill,
Just like you.
or Phyllis, or Legend.
You talk about Nick Saban and Mark Rick, and now you got old Kirby over there, and all of a sudden,
enough, man. That's enough.
Well, what am I supposed to do? I'm going to sit back so you can let this goober talk over me, and he doesn't have anything credible to bring to the table.
I've given you guys. Listen, I don't feel like
Paul, I got a question, Paul.
Yeah.
When I hear somebody say the reason the show ain't that good or the show's bad, who said the show was bad? I mean, who? Some individual? Name me another show that has someone 88 years old that calls a show. Across the country, you cannot name one, okay? I guarantee you this show right now has more listeners than it did when it resided in Alabama, and it was all Bama all the time, okay? Or far more listeners, okay? So
you know, Darryl, you're so bright. I mean, that's a given. That's a given.
The problem is,
a given.
You can't be
when are you going to come up with something original that's really
the problem is Darryl, is I man will not stop talking.
Exactly, Paul.
Dude, what?
Exactly.
You're tell me I'm not stopping.
I sat with you.
Why would you want me to stop talking? You can understand me.
Slow down, okay?
Listen, Paul, I'm tired of you stepping on my call. Get over out of the way and leave this to me.
That's enough. I've had enough of this. Paul, I mean, Darryl actually acted like an adult in that conversation. I-Man did not. I sat with I-Man about a year ago when we did the taping for The Daily Show, when Phyllis was there. Who else was there? Larry. I-Man never stopped talking the entire time. Darryl, like him or not, was willing, I don't know what you guys think in the booth, he was at least willing to have a conversation there. I-Man would not shut up. I-Man would not stop talking. I mean, he did something that I didn't think was even possible. He made Darryl sound less annoying, which is remarkable in and of itself. Someone asked me, at what point did I lose control of the show today? Never had it. We'll take a short break. More of your phone calls. Maybe not when we come back. Let's try to class this joint up. Isn't that the saying? So let's go to someone who is soft-spoken, intellectual, articulate, and will give everyone a chance to just calm down. Homer, how are you? Homer, you there? Told you we were going to calm down. Go right ahead, Homer. Homer did not make the bell. So what? We'll go to someone even calmer, Joe in Alabama.
Good afternoon, Paul. How y'all doing today?
Great.
Well, you ain't got nobody I can argue with there, do you? Because it's been a riot so far. But I got a couple of things I want to mention, Paul. You're still picking up a lot of fans. I know that, and you know, somebody brought to my attention you ain't endorsing the fan club, but we still like it, right?
What's on your mind today, Joe?
All right, let's talk. I'm going to switch this. You know, I think Calipari is just I think Kentucky fans, they're going to eventually get rid of him. He's decent, but he ain't ready for the big leagues as far as I'm concerned. But I got a question for you.
Hold on a second. The guy's been to he's taken 3 teams to a Final Four. He's won a national championship. He's been to probably his Elite Eights are in the double-digit range. And you're going to say he's not a good coach? He may not be Mike Krzyzewski, which he's not, but he's still a pretty good coach.
Well, that's what I mean. He's a pretty good coach, but, you know, he said something even in his statement that a lot of their fans have been saying, that he's just getting these players, you know, and promising them NBA, and if I understood him correct, he acted like that they weren't playing as a team, like they're kind of just playing for each other. I mean, just for themselves. But anyway, I want to get off of that. There's something that I ain't heard mentioned yet, but, you know, we got the first race of NASCAR coming up this weekend, and I'm Stuart Haas all the way. Harvick first. I do chat on Twitter with Delana Harvick, his wife, which she's a very nice lady, but I'm a Harvick fan. But do you have any picks for the Daytona 500? Just, you got any picks on it? Or you plan on watching it? Or
No and no. Lee is in Seattle. How are you, Lee?
I am purely exhausted, Paul. I just wanted to give a shout-out to the coach, the athletic director, the teachers, and the children who lost their lives yesterday.
Oh, that's a great point.
All this bantering back and forth and all the shouting and everything. First of all, nothing was mentioned about sports. Nobody would just take a breath and listen to the other one, and meanwhile there are families mourning in Florida, and I think that may be a little bit more important than everything that's going on in Alabama and Georgia.
Well, Lee, I'm glad you mentioned that, and yesterday this was going on during the show, and I decided not to bring it up because people today know what's going on around them. It's not like it was 20 or 30 years ago when we would inform you listening to a radio show or a TV show about something down the dial. But it was difficult to do a program while this was going on in real time. It's no easier today, and I really appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, I was actually trying to get on yesterday. This is not normally something I would even talk to you about because there's a place and a time for it. But yesterday seemed, when you said the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, that was exactly what it was, part 2. I just couldn't get in yesterday to kind of calm everybody down and say, take a breath and stop bitching about what you're bitching about. So today, thankfully, I got in there, and I just hope everybody just chills out a little bit and realizes how lucky they are that they're not in Florida right now mourning the loss of their child.
Lee, I was in December of 2012. I happened to go up to Connecticut for the first time to visit ESPN, and I was sitting there about to meet someone, and there was this big newsroom, and the story broke about the Newtown massacres, which yesterday reminded me a lot of, although those children were younger. And I was watching this, realizing it was 25 or 30 miles away, but what I didn't realize in looking out over this big room, that there were parents in that room of children, and it was one of the most chilling things that I've ever seen. Watch this thing happening around you that was literally down the street, and we forget sometimes that this affects people in so many different ways, other than the obvious tragedy. And I'm really glad you brought that up, because I frankly struggled yesterday to find the right way to do it without. I just couldn't. I had a hard time with it. Well, I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah, and if you read the story, and just to bring it back to a little bit of a sports content, is there was a coach that was killed trying to protect children.
Yes,
there was an athletic director that was killed trying to protect children. There were teachers that were corralling kids, and they were killed. And then, obviously, the kids. So, there are pure heroes out there, and so far, nobody that's called and yelled at the other person, in my mind, has a hero's fiber in them. So, anyway, on that note, I'll wish you a better day than you've had in the first 53 minutes of your show.
Well, Lee, in all candor, anything that's happened to me today was self-inflicted because of my short-sightedness to think in trying to bring a little levity to an otherwise dismal world today. Hey, thank you very, very much. Homer is up next. What do you say, Homer?
Hey, Brother Paul, is she? I missed you a minute ago.
Yeah, where were you, Homer?
Well, I was actually, my little brother gave me that Surface thing, that plugs into the TV. I was watching you on TV, and my buddy Les Davison down in Florida, he had, they put this dumb stuff up on Facebook with another friend of mine that said, "What does your bar fight look like?" And under the picture of Les Davison, it says, "Calls the police." Well, I know Les very well. He wouldn't call the police for nothing in the world. Yeah, right. Anyway, I was there, and
Well, I tell you what, Homer, I'm really glad. I'm glad we got you, but I'm sorry we missed you early when we had a little more time. A couple more hours to go. Welcome you back. A lot of conversation early on about Florida basketball. We're still to talk about Kentucky basketball with Jeff Goodman here in a few minutes. He was in Auburn last night, and Ed is in South Carolina. Ed, welcome to the show. Good afternoon.
How you doing today, Paul?
We are doing great.
It's a beautiful day in Little River, a good day for golf. Hey, let's talk Kentucky basketball, okay?
Why not?
All coaches, probably sometimes even Saban in football, sometimes they just misjudge the talent, okay? And I just don't think he's got the talent this year. I really don't.
Yeah, well, it's especially difficult to judge talent correctly when you're getting them right out of high school. And they're going to be there for a year, and you have to make it happen immediately.
Right, and they dominate in high school, but it's a different game in college. He doesn't have a point guard, number one, and no big man that's dominating or whatever. He just doesn't have the talent. I think Cal's a great coach. I really do. But he just does not have the talent this year. I just want to get your thought about that.
Yeah, well, I thought Matt Jones, Ed, made a great point yesterday. He said keep your eye on runs in this game coming up. That was one last night. He said Kentucky, when it loses, usually goes through a 5-minute cold stretch. What happened at the end of the game? Thank you for the call. Gene is up next. Gene, thank you. Good afternoon.
Hey, Paul. I'm down here in southeast Alabama, and if we had a I-Man and Jim down here, we'd give them a dose of oil, and they'd be equal on both ends.
You're right.
No, the reason I called you is last week I sent you a Centennial Coke bottle of Bad White.
We got those. Where were they? They were just here yesterday. They were here before the show. I had one there and one. The one was Georgia and one was Bear Bryant, right?
Yes. That's what I was calling. Make
there they
sure
are.
you
Okay,
got them.
we have them on our screen right now. I don't know if you're watching or not, but we just showed them, and I cannot thank you enough. We were everyone here was delighted. I told John Hayes not to drink the Coke. I don't know how long it's been there.
Alabama's 30-something years old, and that Georgia's older than that.
What do you think? 38. What do you think a 38-year-old Coke would taste like?
Probably like 38-year-old Coke.
Well said.
No, the Kentucky game last night, down here in this part of Alabama, the only time we pull up Auburn is when they play Kentucky in basketball.
What did you make out of the game?
I thought it was great. And tell John if he goes to Ireland, I had an uncle that was over in World War II, and he went in one of those bars, and not knowing the tradition of the Irish people, he ordered a beer, and they poured it, and he ordered a nutting, and they poured it, and he ordered a nutting, and they poured it, and he didn't want any more, so he turned his grass upside down on the bar. And that's something you don't do in Ireland. He found out when you done that, it meant you was the best man at the bar.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
The next thing he knew, he was out in the street as that boy was talking.
John,
about
did you ever turn down a beer in Ireland? Oh, you weren't in Ireland, but in Britain.
Turn down a beer? That's not my vocabulary.
Right.
Well, this is after you drink it, John, and get finished and don't want
no
more.
you mean turn the glass upside down?
Yeah.
Yes.
No.
You're supposed to put your hand over it.
Let me ask you. Hold on. What did you drink in England, John?
I did gin and tonics in London. They were incredible.
Boddingtons?
And I drank mostly French wine in Paris.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, it was great.
Oh, he was living
you fancy?
it up, wasn't he?
I guess what's the saying? When in Paris? No, that's actually Rome. I'm sorry. Hey, thank you very much. Hey, Gene, thank you so much for the Coke bottles.
I appreciate it, Paul, and y'all have a good day here.
That means a lot. We really appreciate that. That was unbelievably cool to get those. Bob in Norman, Oklahoma. Hello, Bob.
Hello.
Hi there.
I want to talk to Paul. I coached football over in Alabama for 12 years. I've been living over here in this Indian Territory for the last 30, but I coached in Mobile for 9 years, but I met Bear when I was a kid.
Tell us about it.
He was at A&M when I was in Mississippi.
Yeah.
And they called Bear the big bear, it means the little bear in Alabama.
So, Bob, where did you coach?
Baker High School in Mobile.
Wow, how interesting.
I went there from Mississippi. I married Miss Gulf Coast. I was just out of college, and by the way, I'm 5'10", 160 pounds now, and I was then. And I played point guard for Georgia in 1950, led them to the national playoffs. And,
so if you played in the 50s, how old would you be now?
I'm 90.
90?
Yeah. That's 50 years ago.
Yeah, I was doing the math.
68 years ago.
That's pretty amazing. You sound pretty spry for 90.
Well, I keep up with athletics all my life, and I coached football for 20 years, and 12 years in Alabama, but 4 in Georgia and 4 in Mississippi. And I married Miss Gulf Coast in Mississippi and stayed down there and took a job out in the swamp there at a little old high school that didn't have football. And cause that's where she was from, and I told her she'd marry me, I'd be out there, and I'd be their coach. And I was just out of college, so anyway, so they wanted me to be their coach, and but didn't have football. And I wasn't going to a school that didn't have football because I played high school football at Roanoke, Alabama. And so, anyway, they said they'd have football. Well, there's a little small school and just one big old country store out there in the wilderness. And so, but those two guys I was talking to both had Congressional Medals of Honor.
Oh, my goodness.
Swamp men. I watched one of them's life a few years ago. He was like the Mississippi Sergeant York was to Tennessee. And after those fellas sat down and talked to me, and I went camped out with them in that swamp, hunting and listened to their stories. And my God, I looked at them. I said, "Fellas, I'll be your coach, and we'll have football one way or another." And I took a bunch of those alligator wrestlers and wild boar hunters. And I had 17 boys, and we picked us up a football field, and everybody in Mississippi heard we was starting football, and they called me and won the first game of the season. And I took 17 boys, and we got Lucedale, which was a county seat, in the home of Bruce Freifogel, who was one of the Tennessee's great All-American tailbacks, triple threat guy. And anyway, that's where he was from. I got to know him, so, and, well, he was still playing Tennessee at the time, but anyway, so we borrowed their field under lights. We didn't have no lights, and they let us play at the county seats in Louisville on Saturday night, and we played McLean High School, and they had about 50 guys, and we beat them 14-7. It's the first game they've ever seen. But the thing about it was, I had a punter like Ray Guy, and I didn't know it. I thought I was a great coach. And I had a quarterback guy. About 4 of them swamp boys would have played for the Patriots right now if we got that. But I thought it was my coaching. But anyway, I stayed there 4 years. But that year I went to a clinic in Jackson, Mississippi, football clinic. And I dressed up in my Johnny Carson suit and went up there. And he and Bud Wilkerson were putting on a clinic in Jackson. And there was 500 or 600 coaches from all over the nation there at that clinic. And putting it on for Johnny Voigt at Ole Miss. And I went up there, and that was Barry Bryant. He's the coach at Texas A&M. Bud was the coach at Oklahoma then. And they looked like college boys, but Barry was about 37 or 8 years old then. Bud was about 45. But anyway, they were signing autographs, and I couldn't believe what I was looking at. And Barry turned around and signed mine, and I never had met him or seen him, but I knew all about his life. And I looked at him and I said, "Look, fella, I didn't come here to get your name on a damn piece of paper. I come up here to learn football. It was a 1-week clinic, you know." And he kind of sniggered and looked me up and down, and I said, "No, thing, you hadn't even asked me for my autograph yet." I wasn't known by nobody. And he kind of sniggered and reached down my waist and picked me up under his arm. And he brought Gene Stallings and Kettler, his quarterback, with him to, to help show things he's doing in coaching at the clinic. And he looked at them and said, "Come on, go with me. This is the kind of guy I like to meet." But I had me under his arm like a little kid, which was compared to him, and went walking down some stairs in a room and kept me in there 30 minutes and went over blocking, tackling, trap blocks and everything else. But I knew all that stuff, and because I've been through it before. And so anyway, and he said, "Now go send me some damn athletes." and so I went on and sat down in the lobby of a hotel, Heidelberg Hotel. Then this is before interstates and Holiday Inns, Ramada Inns and stuff like that. This is in about 1955. And so anyway, a guy sat down there, and the clinic was starting in that big amphitheater upstairs. The meeting was fixing to start up there in about 30 minutes. And dressed up guy sat down in front of me. And by the way, in basketball that year, I had created the huddle in basketball. And I had football players. Well, I coached everything at the school. I was the only coach I had. And anyway, we were winning. But we'd get ahead 2 or 3 points, and then we'd just go in the huddle and hold the ball. Because back then, you could stand and hold the ball the whole quarter. There's no rule against it. The only way you get the ball is go up there and foul somebody. And so I was hated everywhere we went, but we're still winning by 24-18. And everybody wanted to kill me at those gyms. But anyway, this dressed-up dude sat down in front of me, and I had my ticket cost $10, and you got a pen of Basin High School on it on my chest. And he had read all across the nation about that huddle in basketball that was created by some jerk down in South Mississippi. And he looked at it, and I didn't know who he was, well-dressed gentleman. And he looked at that and said, "You from Basin, Mississippi?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "There's some dude that sat down there and started to huddle in basketball." I said, "I don't believe that." Well, I said, "Well, it's true." And he said, I said, "Yeah, I'm coach there." And he went to ask me crazy questions about basketball. Stupid. And I'd tell him, he said, "I don't believe that. I don't believe that." And everything I'd say, he'd say something like that. So I just tested him out good. And I was a boxer and fighter really well. I wasn't afraid of anybody. So I just gave him a good cussing. Well, it's time to go upstairs to the meeting in Barron, Bud, Mabel Edwardson, BYU, and all the famous coaches up there, and 600 coaches from all over the nation. And by golly, when I got seated, I got on the front row, and Bear was up there, and the curtains opened, and out walked this guy to the rostrum, and Bear introduced him. He was Frank McGuire, who just won the national championship in basketball at North Carolina. The guy who I had just cussed out down in the lobby, trying to teach him basketball. I finally told him, I said, well, hell, if you don't shut up and listen, you can't never learn nothing about basketball, fella. And he looked down at me and
Hey there, I'm a glue stick, so I have one job. I glue kid stuff. So sorry for being jealous of Geico, who does a ton more, like give you 24/7 access to thousands of licensed agents. And Geico has been around for over 75 years and has a 97% customer satisfaction rating. While I've just got mediocre adhesive skills, Geico also has an award-winning mobile app. Uh-oh, arts and crafts time. No eating the glue stick, Miss Lydia.
Geico. Expect great savings and a whole lot more.
Welcome back to the program. By the way, for those of you who are away on radio, we just finished the call with Bob. No kidding aside, the actual call went. Do we have an official time on it? 12:55. It could have gone longer, but we finally had to come back on during the commercial break. So a 12-minute and 55-second call from Bob in Norman, Oklahoma. Just absolutely incredible recall. He's 90. He's talking about things that happened when he was, 20, 30 years old. Most of us have trouble remembering 10 minutes ago, let alone 50, 70, 80 years ago. Welcome back. Jeff Goodman has a good recall. I hope he has a recall of what he was doing last night. What were you doing last night? Jeff Goodman joining us from ESPN. Jeff, it is a pleasure. We missed you. You've been so busy going across the world with the Ball family and back that first chance to talk to you during the basketball season. How are you?
I'm doing well. Happy to be back for the last month or so. Had a blast in Lithuania. Great country. They love their basketball, so that was very cool. And, the craziest thing, Paul, was like I go for 10 days to Lithuania. I come back and I look at the rankings and it's like Virginia 1, Purdue 2, Texas Tech, 7, Auburn 10. I'm like, what the hell happened while I was gone?
Well, let's start with what you saw last night. It was not your typical Wednesday night for John Calipari. You got a chance to see it firsthand. What did you see, and what happens next?
It was just so strange because, I was at Auburn for a couple of days and went over to Alabama, too, and saw them play. And, you look at it and you say, like, Auburn's a 9.5-point favorite, first of all, and they're supposed to win that game. And it's a shocker if Kentucky pulls off a win against an Auburn team that is without arguably its two most talented players this year, with Austin Wiley and D'Angelo Purifoy. And, it's still like you kind of scratch your head as you're watching it last night saying, what the hell is going on here with Kentucky and why aren't they as good as they've been in the past? And we knew, I've seen a lot of these kids play, I go out as much as I can in AU ball, and we knew they didn't have a star. They barely got a top 10 player. Kevin Knox was, I think, ranked 10th. And he wasn't that type of guy that you envisioned as a superstar. But still, when you actually see it, and you see, Hamid Diallo really didn't get much better, and he's not a great shooter, and the team overall isn't great, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's a good point guard, but he doesn't make people better. And Quade Green probably isn't quite good enough. He's not good enough to be a Kentucky high-level John Calipari point guard. And all these things fit together, and then you have the part where they just don't look like they love playing with one another and make it easier for each other. And that's kind of what you have right now, a team that is just trying to figure out whether they can get to the NCAA tournament. And what I wrote, Paul, was, that 2013 team that went to the NIT, they kind of had an excuse. New Orleans, I was there in Gainesville. It was like February 12th, I think, when he went down with a torn ACL. And they weren't great that year, but they would have made the tournament unless the bottom fell out. And then the bottom did fall out with that New Orleans, and they went to the NIT. But this team has no excuse, none.
I'm really interested because you and I both know basketball is a strange sport. Cal, and the year after that, didn't have a great team. I think he was an 8 or a 9, beat Wichita State, went to the championship game. Yeah. And a lot of people have pointed to that, but that was a week or two ago. That seems like a lifetime ago with this Kentucky team. What do you expect over these next 3 weeks?
You know, they could beat or lose to anybody. I mean, he said it. He said, listen, if we can get a win, just get a win and get kind of a little bit of swagger back. And they played okay against Auburn. I mean, Auburn didn't make shots, but Kentucky was up fairly late in the game on the road against a team that's probably going to win the SEC and get a number 2 or 3 seed at the end of the day, depending on what happens. So, you know, they've got some talent. But I think Cal knows, and I asked him this at the end. He started to get up at the end of the press conference last night, and he had made mention of the Final Four, and I kind of tongue-in-cheek said, you know, do you still think you have a shot at this team has any shot at going to the Final Four? And he said, yeah. You know, we just played really well, or we were up 4 or 6 points late in the game against Auburn. But I don't think he believes that. I don't think he believes this team can get in a roll and win 4 straight. I think there's just too many holes with this team. And, again, who's that guy that's going to take over at the end of the game you're going to give the ball to, and he's just going to make a play? And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is a good player, but not a great player. Kevin Knox really can't do that. He can't really create for himself. And on the defensive end, Cal alluded to it last night without mentioning his name. He was terrible down the stretch defensively.
Jeff Goodman with us from ESPN. Jeff, let's talk about the other side of last night. And there's just so much to chew on with Bruce Pearl. Before we get to the team on the court, what's going on with Bruce Pearl in Auburn and Bruce Pearl, obviously, with the NCAA and everything else?
So I was down there for a game day feature that'll run Saturday. So I sat down with Bruce for a while a couple mornings ago. And the one thing I can say is he alluded to the fact that he has spoken to the administration. He has sat down and talked to them and interviewed with them. To what extent, he wouldn't tell me. But there have been conversations there, and I think there's going to be more in the next few weeks or month or so, or maybe right after the season. And I think that will determine certainly what his future is. I mean, he doesn't make any bones about it.
Jeff,
you know?
I mean, that's news, isn't it? Because nobody else until now has or had that. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he has kind of complied. Again, has he sat down and you know, had a 4-hour interview? I don't know. He wouldn't go into the details, but there were conversations there, and it sounds like there's going to be more upcoming. So, you know, new athletic director who came in from Buffalo recently, whole new administration, everything. It's hard right now. I mean, that place was filled up. That environment was as good, Paul, as any I've seen this year, other than when I was at Duke, at Cameron, or at Kansas and Fog Allen. It was that good. 9,000. I couldn't believe it. I mean, first of all, I couldn't believe it. I've never been to Auburn for a basketball game. Well, why would I go? I mean, honestly, why would I go to Auburn in the last 20 years for a basketball game? I wouldn't. There's been no reason. So I go there, and I don't know what to expect, and it was tremendous. And that's part of the deal right now. And Bruce said it. He said, listen, I don't know what my future is going to hold here. I hope I'm going to be here a long time, but I think even he is kind of, we'll see what happens. But the more he wins, certainly the better chance he has to stay.
Finally, your takeaway from being around Avery Johnson in Alabama. They move on to Lexington Saturday afternoon.
So here's my deal with Alabama: is they're young, and the ball. They've been very inconsistent all year. And why? It's easy to see when you watch them because the guy with his hand, with the ball in his hands all the time is Colin Sexton. Talented freshman. Very, very inconsistent with his decision-making, with his play. At times, he does look like a lottery pick. And at times, he just looks like he has no clue how to play. So that's the reason why. And really, Avery's got to deprogram some of these guys, and he's not used to it. Calipari's a genius at it for the most part. This year has been tough. But for Avery, it's new dealing with these guys like Colin Sexton and the AU culture and trying to rip that out of them and deprogram it. And I think that's what he's trying to do with Colin Sexton. And Colin Sexton has a wild-type game. That's how he plays. So that's Alabama. They can get in a roll. They could win 4 straight in the tournament and go to the Final Four. And it wouldn't shock me. Herb Jones, their freshman, I love. I love this kid. I think he's going to be a lottery pick in 2 years. I think Petty's really good. They've got a good team, but again, it's all up to Colin Sexton, and can he play under control and make good decisions?
Jeff, what a pleasure to catch back up with you. Look forward to seeing you in the next few weeks. Be well, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks a lot, Paul. Appreciate it, man.
Great stuff. Jeff Goodman, one of the best around in Auburn last night. We will take a break, and before that game started, another game ended in Nashville in absolutely buzzer-beater fashion. We'll talk to the hero at Memorial Gymnasium when we come back. Difficult. Welcome the radio audience back. Right before the Auburn game against Kentucky, I'm flipping around, keeping up with a bunch of games, and I lock into Vanderbilt. Of course, my wife's a Vanderbilt person, so we were even more interested. But going in, it didn't seem like a game that you would be glued to. But it started going back and forth and back and forth. And did you see the end of the game? Take a look.
Missed the second 2-point game. Vanderbilt out of timeouts. LaChance an open look for 3! He hit it! LaChance hit it, the senior!
Let's take another look at this one. With the composure of Riley Chance, who took contact on the wing. Perhaps even shuffled his feet a little bit before he let that ball go. That is an unbelievable shot by Riley LaChance.
Nothing like a little pressure there for Riley LaChance, and Riley joins us. Riley, first of all, congratulations, and it's now 3:36 in Nashville. That game ended about 8 o'clock last night. How many times have you seen that replay?
I've seen it a good amount so far. It's been on social media a lot, so I've seen it a good amount.
Listen, obviously, it was a pressure-packed situation, game on the line. I mean, I'm stating the obvious here, but kind of take us through your mindset.
Yeah, I mean, it's a play. We had actually ran the possession before, and play we practice all the time. And, we knew what we were going to when they were at the line because we didn't have any timeouts left. So, Peyton made a good pass up the floor. And, I actually told him at the free throw line that, since we ran at the play before, I was probably going to give it to him, but I felt the guy kind of back off me, and luckily I was open.
So, it didn't look like you blinked an eye. I mean, it was just a perfect shot. I mean, there was a little confusion in the replay, although from home didn't look like there was any doubt. Did you have any doubt that you got it off and behind the line?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was good. I felt that I got it off in plenty of time, and I thought it was a 3, but I did get bumped a little bit from the back, so I had to kind of take a step forward with my right foot. So. I was a little nervous that my foot might have been on the line, but after seeing the replay, I was confident it was a 3.
Listen, you've seen a lot throughout your career. You're beginning to wind things down at Vanderbilt. Have you hit a shot, anything quite like that?
No, that's probably the biggest one I've had since I've been here. I've been in that situation a couple of times. I'm glad to finally come through.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm really interested because I remember seeing you in other situations, and all players are there, Riley. But I realize it was a Wednesday night game, but it's important to you and it's important to your teammates. But you mentioned a little. I mean, how do you shut everything else out when fans are screaming and the game's being disseminated across the entire country?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a situation I like to be in, and. My teammates have a lot of confidence in me. Coaches have a lot of confidence in me. So, I got to give a lot of credit to them. And that was a big win for us. We're trying to, get better every single day and win some games here down the stretch and put a couple together going into the SEC tournament. I
want to ask you because you played for Coach Stallings and you've been in the tournament and obviously last year in the tournament as well with Coach. How has this year been different? I know a lot has come and gone, and a lot of players have moved out and graduated from Vanderbilt. This has not been a spectacular year by Vanderbilt standards, but how have you been able to cope as one of the senior leaders?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been definitely a little bit of a struggle for us. We got a really young team, especially with Matt going out. him getting hurt really hurts us on both ends of the floor. And we've had guys step up. We've been playing a lot better at home. We just got to focus on, like I said, getting better every day and putting some games together here down the stretch.
We were talking before you came on, and I realize you may or may not have seen it, but Kentucky went down again. You guys had a shot at them and really almost put them away about 2 weeks ago. But just your view of the SEC from the court. We like to talk about it from the cheap seats, but you're on the court every night. What have you seen around the league this year?
Yeah, the league's extremely competitive. We've got some, excellent players, excellent coaches, and it's definitely the most competitive from top to bottom that it's been since I've been here in my 4 years. And I think, it's really an open race when it comes down to, these last couple of games and especially the SEC tournament. I think there's a lot of teams who can contend. I think come SEC tournament time, it's going to be really fun because there's going to be a lot of competitive games from, the first day to the last day. So it's definitely the most competitive it's been since I've been here.
Finally, today, the day after, and I don't want to make this only about you. You've got a lot of teammates. You've got a great coach. But what has it been like just walking around Nashville today?
It's been nice. I had a couple of professors give us a shout out in some classes and stuff like that. But it's been nice, and it just feels good to get a win on our home floor and in front of our fans who've really supported us all year long through an up and down season.
3 weeks away from the SEC tournament. We'll see you up there. Hey, thank you very much. Congratulations again.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate it.
You got it. What a cool moment for a senior at Vanderbilt. We'll take a short break. More of your phone calls at 855-242-7285. More guests who come. We're coming right back. Welcome back. Glad you're with us here on a Thursday afternoon. Jeff is in Florida, and you are on the air. Hello, Jeff. Good afternoon.
Hey, Paul. Glad you'd take my call. I'm curious about the SEC and possibly going to a 9-game schedule if that's going to be brought up at the convention more. I just think it's really sad that Auburn hasn't played Florida. It'll be 12 years. I don't think Georgia's ever played Texas A&M. This will be the first year, and it's just not right. I miss those old games we used to have with Auburn when Wilbur Marshall played against Bo Jackson, and it's just a lot of things that need to be tweaked and improved. And having 2 SEC teams in a national title game is all right, but yet still Georgia should have had an opportunity possibly to play Alabama during the season.
Jeff, let me allow me to interrupt you for a second. I don't think it's coming up. I've spoken to the commissioner about this. I've spoken to other people over the last 2 or 3 years, and there has been no appetite whatsoever from the people that run this league. I happen to agree with you. I think the SEC opens itself up to widespread and justified criticism, but they don't want to do it, and I think there's a very specific reason they don't want to do it. It just creates more losses on the ledger, which takes away from the league in their mind.
That's really sad because it takes away a lot from the fans, too. I mean, Auburn not playing Florida for 12 years. They used to play every year for many, many years.
I agree.
And there's just something's got to change, but maybe there'll be some discussion. I'm just hoping it'll go that direction. I sure appreciate you taking my call.
Yeah, listen, I agree with you. I want you to understand that. But the SEC believes they know more than we do. Let's check in next with Donna in Kentucky. Hello, Donna. Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm driving back from Auburn right now. I'm about 50 miles from home, so it's been very entertaining listening to ESPN and your show.
How was the game last night?
Well, I think my ears are still ringing. Jeff Goodman referred to the atmosphere there. It was electric. It was a lot of fun, and I've gone down there before. I have relatives there, so I go watch Kentucky and Auburn play. And interestingly enough, they're 20-2, and the 2 games I've been at both of them. So my nephews think that maybe I'm Auburn's good luck charm. So I don't know if I'm going to go to the next one or not. But one thing I took away from Kentucky's game was they really fought hard, and that's what I've been disappointed with them this year. They're kind of lackadaisical, you know. I think about Tyler Ulis's part, and I think that's a component that's missing. And Kevin Knox kind of disappeared in the second half, and we really needed him. But we had to win until the last few minutes.
Oh no! I mean, there was a point. I think it was about 2 minutes ago. Kentucky had a chance to make it a one possession game, didn't they?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
and it was exciting. It was, and there were Kentucky fans scattered about, but the Auburn fans were just amazing. And I have to say that student body, when the national anthem was played, those basketball boys were out there at total form, and the kids were. You could have heard a pin drop in there then, and just very respectful. And I just really enjoyed going down there, even though we did lose. And I love Kentucky. Our son graduated from there. My husband played football there in the 60s, and it's, we bleed blue, but we can admire all these good players.
Well, thank you very much. I'm really glad you enjoyed it. It sounded, just watching, it looked like an amazing night. Thanks for the call. Appreciate it very much. Melanie is in Louisiana. Go right ahead, Melanie.
Yeah, I have to say thank you for taking my call. Been wanting to call you. You are a stand-up guy. You took aim at Coach O with the Matt Canada debacle, and also for his poor performance, meaning Coach O in the signing day. And there was another sports writer who also jumped on him about no signing of cornerback or a quarterback. And he then had, meaning Coach O, which you may or may not know, on the weekend did a interview with local station WWL and was asked a couple questions about the cornerback and quarterback situation. And he's hired if you can't get a player, he hired a cornerback, quote, coach. I'm wondering if, he's working for the defensive coordinator, or if the defensive coordinator is working for him, the guy that we gave this huge salary to.
Yeah, you're talking about Dave Aranda. It's a good question. When the university pretty much mortgages its future on retaining a defensive coordinator, it does make you wonder who really has the power. Thank you for the call. I do appreciate it. Ed is in Connecticut.
I sure am, and wishing I was down there. You know, once the season's over, once Georgia played Alabama, that's it. No more news about anything up here. You know, automatically basketball, and I still got the UConn girls. Haven't mentioned them to you for a while, but they're still looking good. And I guess Gino still has the number, but you know, it's really nice to see schools like Mississippi State and South Carolina, and Duke and Kentucky showing up in girls basketball now. Mississippi, you know, it's all of a sudden sport now. It really is.
Yeah, I watched the South Carolina UConn game, and Gino still has it. You're right. That was tough to watch as a fan of Don Staley, but they're in a good spot. Tournament's a couple weeks off, and I do think Mississippi State looks formidable, though. They really look like a great team this year. Of course, they came in second last year.
Well, it's all a matter of timing that we all found out last year. It ain't whether you lose, it's when you lose. And I'm a little scared right now to see UConn, you know, still undefeated. Well, you know, we saw it last year. My God, they won 110 games in a row, and they lost one lousy game, and that was it. It was history. And,
yeah, they reminded me of Kentucky a couple of years ago. They had a perfect season. They lost to Wisconsin in the same spot, semifinal game, and it all goes down the drain.
It all goes down the drain.
That's tournament sports, as you well know.
Oh, yes. But I still, you're going to laugh at me, I still miss the football season. It just was so great.
Yeah, Ed, after days like today, I miss it even